Yes. All right. Everybody should have their study guides out so you guys can go over your key terms, make sure you have the right ones, so that you are ready for the quiz tomorrow. If you are not ready for the quiz tomorrow, now's the time to get ready. There should be 3 study guides. Section 1, section 2, section 3. There should only be 3. No, you did have time. Alright, so let's look at section 1. Let's start with section 1. Our first key term in section 1 is Aeneas. Who is Aeneas? Or who was Aeneas? Anijah.
It was the first time that the Romans traced their history back to he was a Trojan hero who was killed.
Okay, a Trojan hero who escaped Troy that Romans traced their heritage back to. Okay? Number 2, Romulus and Remus. Who are Romulus and Remus? Enrique.
2 brothers who were thrown to the river from the
Okay, 2 brothers who were thrown to into a river when they were babies and raised by wolves. What else is important about them? Vera. They were the founders of Rome. They built Rome. Romulus and Remus built Rome. That's the most important thing to know about them, is that they were the brothers who built Rome. Yes, Fred.
Which was the one that killed the other brother?
Romulus killed Remus. Otherwise, it would be named Reme instead of Rome. It was named after Romulus. That might also be an important thing to remember. Which brother killed who? Romulus killed Remus.
Why didn't you say that?
Number 3. What is a republic? Republic. What is a republic? Kendall. Okay, a type of government is a type of government where people elect leaders to represent them. Kind of like our government. We elect leaders. In fact, today is an election day. Most people probably don't really care. That's fine. Dictators. Who are dictators? Huh? No, there are multiple types of elections. This is for today's governor of the state of Illinois. Zach, what is a dictator?
Rulers with almost absolute power.
Rulers with almost absolute power. Is there any other information we can add to that? Vera? Okay, they only ruled for 6 months. Not very long. Okay? So they had absolute power, but they only had it for a short period of time. Cincinnatus. Who is Cincinnatus? Don't say he's the founder of Cincinnati. That's wrong. Brandon.
Famous dictator.
A famous dictator. Why was he famous? Why he's famous is more important than that he's famous. Anijah?
He was chosen by the Romans to defend their land.
Okay, he was chosen by the Romans to defend their land. Still more important information about him. Vera?
He defeated the enemy so quickly and in a certain, over that certain short amount of time, once the enemy was defeated, he went back.
Right. It was the most important thing to know about Cincinnatus is that he was asked to take complete control of the government, and before his time was supposed to be up, he retired anyway. He gave up power. He let go of the power and allowed it to go back to the republic, back to the people. He did not hold on to power. Plebeians. Who are the plebeians? Brendan, who are the plebeians? The regular people, the farmers, the workers, the regular people. Okay? Patricians. Who are the patricians? Kayla, who are the patricians? Nobles. The nobles, the people in governance, the higher ranking people. So once again, as we've seen in many of our societies, we see this sort of split between higher ranking people, people involved in government, people involved in religion, and then we have the other people, the everyday people, the people who just do all the regular work. We see that split. We have the plebeians and the patricians. Okay? All right, so that takes care of. Were there any more from section 1 I'm missing?
No.
I think so. All right, section 2. Magistrates. Section 2. If we're going a little bit too quickly and you don't have time to add information to these, let me know, because I want to make sure that you have the most complete answers possible on your study guide, so you can more easily study them when you get home tonight. Courtney, who are the magistrates? Officials? Officials of what? Like, are we talking about like basketball officials, like the guys who run around in the striped shirts calling fouls?
Referees.
They're also known as officials. That's what their title is called. Only one person actually out there is a referee. So what do we mean when we say officials? What does that mean? Officials. Who are the officials? Well, what does an official do? Brandon, what does an official do?
It's kind of like a government, like a government helper or something like that.
Okay, so a government worker, a government helper, someone who works in the government. Okay? So an official person working in government. So like a senator, or in our form we'd have like a representative or a senator, or maybe someone who just works for them. They would be a government official, someone who works in the government. Consuls. Who were the consuls? Who were the consuls? Zach.
Two most powerful magistrates.
Okay. They were the two most powerful magistrates, the two most powerful people in Congress. You can sort of relate them to our current president, the way our system runs with a president. You have all the representatives, all the senators, as they called them, from all over the Roman Empire. And as the Roman Empire started to expand, you would start to see senators come in from different parts. So as Julius Caesar went in and conquered Gaul, all of a sudden Gaul became a part of the Roman Empire, and so Gaul would send representatives to Rome so they could vote on things. When Caesar first went into Britain, and then later Hadrian went into Britain, and they conquered all of Britannia, or at least most of it up to Hadrian's Wall, Britannia sent representatives, senators down to be a part of Roman government. Sorry, Carthage, you didn't get any senators. They just sort of wiped you guys out. But we'll get to that later. But the areas that used to be Carthage, those areas, those people that were there, the North African parts of the Roman Empire, would have representatives that would be sent to the Senate. And you have all these people, I mean, imagine all these people from all over the world. From all over the Roman Empire. Tons of people, right? It would be like you guys sitting here, except like, I don't know, bring all the world history classes together and you're all sitting in one room. And you have to, as a group, decide what you're going to do for the day. Would that be very easy? No. Especially if I gave you if you had to accomplish something. Like, it couldn't just be, well, I think today we're going to take a nap. I'm pretty sure you could get a pretty unanimous vote on that. Today we're going to eat bagels. I don't know. But you're going to have differing opinions, you're going to have a lot of argument. So what the Senate realized is that they needed to have someone to sort of make final decisions, to sort of direct them and get their ideas on things. So they came up with consuls. They had 2 of them. And the nice part about consuls is because there was 2 of them, it meant that not one person had all the power all the time. That's why they had 2 of them. But it didn't stay that way. It didn't stay that way. Let's see here. Roman Senate. What is the Roman Senate? The Roman Senate. TJ, what's the Roman Senate?
Consuls of wealthy and powerful Romans.
Okay. What else? Kendall. They advise the city's leaders. Ollie, did you have something else to add? No. Okay. They advise the city's leaders. So while the Senate would advise, the Senate couldn't necessarily make the decisions. It was up to the consuls to make the decision. But the Senate, because everyone was represented, they could all make sure that everybody, they were supposed to make sure that everybody's voice was heard. But that didn't always happen. And the plebeians weren't always as well represented as they should have been. All right, and then obviously the slaves weren't represented at all. They don't get a vote until they become citizens, if that's possible. Veto. What is a veto? What is a veto? Okay. It means to prohibit. And what is so the word veto means to prohibit. So what is a veto? If you were talking about you vetoed something or you had a veto, what does that mean? It's actually a term we use in modern government. Charlie? Okay. All right. Courtney?
You don't allow it to happen, like if I was to have a new rule and veto it and say that's not allowed.
Right. Let's say I let you guys make up all the rules for the classroom. Right? At the very beginning of the year, I let you guys come together and you guys can discuss things and make all the rules. But I held on to veto power, which means that you could come up with all the rules, and as long as I agreed with all the rules, I would let them pass. But if there was a rule I didn't like that every 3rd day you guys all got to lay on the desks and take a nap, I wouldn't like that rule. And so I could veto that rule, and that would mean that rule is forbidden. It's not allowed. It doesn't count anymore. We actually still use that. The president still retains veto power in our form of government. The Senate, the Congress, they can vote on just about any bill and they can get anything passed. Really, if they can get their minds to it, they can pass anything they want to. But the president has to sign off on it. And if the president doesn't sign off on it, he can veto it. Which means he puts a little stamp on it and he doesn't sign off on it, it doesn't get passed. Now we've actually added in a further system, which means that the people really, really want something. After a president's vetoed it, it can go back to Congress and get voted on again, and they can override the veto. But once it's been vetoed, very rarely do things in our government actually ever get passed in a veto override situation. It doesn't happen very often. But it can. It's possible for it to happen. Which means you couldn't have like a president who just hates everything that the Congress does and vetoes everything that they do. It gives a little bit more balance to the power of the president. Let's see here. Next one. Latin. What is Latin? Oh yeah, what is Latin? Elliot, I'm sorry, Elliot. Rome's language. Rome's language. Does anybody speak Latin? It's actually Latin's actually considered a dead language, which means that there's no group of people that speak it anymore. There are a number of languages that are based on Latin. Does anybody know of any Latin-based languages? There are three. Pig Latin is not based on Latin. That's just a funny language. No, not directly.
Spanish?
Spanish is one. Yes, Spanish is one.
Dang, I guess.
Greek is not. Spanish is one.
English is Italian.
Italian is another.
Oh, I got one.
English is not.
Yeah, I didn't say.
No, it's not.
I thought we were based on.
I'll talk.
think
I'll
I-
talk to you about the difference in just a second.
Portuguese?
Portuguese is also. There's one more. There's one more big one. Nope. It's look at the map and look at where the Roman Empire is, and it will tell you.
Gaul?
Gaul, which is modern day what?
Modern day
Oh.
Galatia?
French.
French. French, Spanish, Italian, and
I
Portuguese
guess two
are
of those.
all what we call Latin-based languages, which means that they not only get the way that their words are formed from Latin, but also the way that you put together sentences is similar to Latin. English does use a massive amount of Latin words. We use a lot of Latin words and we use a lot of Latin phrasing, but our sentence structure, what makes our language, is actually Germanic. Our language is massively Germanic. The way our sentence structure is, English is a Germanic language with a lot of Latin thrown into it. Yes?
That could also be partially the cause of why Italian and Spanish people can sometimes understand.
Mm-hmm. It's actually very if you speak Spanish, learning Italian or French is not that difficult because they are very, very similar. And if you ever get a chance to take a look at it, you'll see that I'm not that far. Okay, next one. Checks and balances. What are checks and balances? What are checks and balances? Sounds like a really fun game from Parker Brothers. Checks and balances. What are you playing this weekend? I'm playing checks and balances, man.
Yeah.
Kendall, what are checks and balances? Right, a way of balancing power in government so that not one person or one small group of people can obtain all of the power. So if Rome can make some decisions, then not all their decisions can be approved unless the Visigoths write off on it. And the Visigoths can't make any decisions unless the Gauls sign off on it. But nobody lets the Britons and the Carthaginians make decisions.
Yay.
So, sorry. Because there's only like 3 is like a good number for balance of power. 5 is too many. Okay, next one. The forum. What is the forum? What is the forum? And don't tell me it's a place you go online to ask questions of other users. Because although that's true, and based on the Roman forum, it's not the same thing. Lindsay. Rome's public meeting place, exactly. How many of you guys have ever, I don't know if you do this, I am only thinking about this right now because I was on there last night. I was having, I have a nice little thing, does anybody remember the commercials that were out right around Christmas? I think they're still out now, for a little device called a Chromecast.
Yeah.
It's a little thing, you plug it into your TV and you can like watch Netflix on your phone and then send it up to your TV and watch it on your TV. Well, I was having problems with my Chromecast last night. I kept getting the little spinning wheel of death telling me that my Netflix was loaded to 25% and that's all it was going to load. It just spin. And it was driving me nuts. So I wanted to know how to find an answer for it. So the first place I went to Chrome's website, and their official stuff didn't have anything. So where did I go? I did like the Romans did, and I went to the meeting place. I went to the place where other users, other people who had the same problems, and some experts met together to talk about it. And I went to the forum. There's a forum, and I posted a question. This is my problem. I'm waiting for a response. I just gotta wait. But in Roman days, that's how people talked about things, figured out things, shared ideas, shared new things. They got together in the forum and they talked about things. They shared ideas. I've learned tons of things about setting up computers and whatnot in forum. You have a question, you have a concern. More than likely, if you go to a forum, you'll find that somebody else has had the same problem there. And that's what the Romans did. They would get together and they would talk about things in the forum. That's where we get the word, that's where we get the idea of these forums to ask questions. Okay? It is. Ask.com is basically a large forum. Yahoo Answers is a large forum. someone has a question, they go out and they put out a question, and they wait for other people, just random people, to come and answer it. Which is why Yahoo Answers and Ask.com are not very good, reliable resources when you're talking about writing papers, because anybody can write stuff in there. But sometimes, when you're looking for a technical answer on how to fix something, just anybody might be a good source of information. It might be worth a try anyways. Yeah, if you're looking for a good book, if you want to find out what people think about a particular movie, always a good place to go see. Okay, section 3. Let's take a look at section 3. Section 3. Section 3. Section 3. 1, 2, and 3. Our last section, section 3. Legions. I want somebody from Rome to answer this question. Who are the legions? What is a Roman legion? Enrique, what's a Roman legion? A group of up to 6,000 soldiers. Julius Caesar, when Julius Caesar was a general and was conquering areas like Gaul and into Britannia, and even when he marched on Rome, so Julius Caesar started out here and started making his way into Gaul and started conquering basically this entire area before he started to move into what is now Great Britain, what was then known as Britain, or Britannia. As he moved into those places, he actually took over parts of Great Britain with only 1 legion, but he marched with at least 3. 18,000 men he marched with on a regular basis. That was just his standing group of people that marched with him. It was 3 legions. Sometimes he had more. But he just went everywhere with them. And when Rome decided that he shouldn't have so much power, he brought 2 of them down to Rome with him to convince them he needed to keep that power. And we'll talk more about Julius Caesar when we get back from spring break. But if you want to study a guy with some guts, Julius Caesar was a guy. He is a guy. Punic Wars. What were the Punic Wars? Punic Wars. Somebody from Carthage answer this question. Brandon, what? A series of wars against Carthage. And it was really the Punic Wars that sort of, gentlemen, knock it off. It was really the Punic Wars that established Rome as a power. They were just a small Italian, mainly on the Italian peninsula, a small kingdom. They hadn't really started spreading. You can see the darker red in Italy right here. They hadn't really started spreading until they decided to spread it down in here into Sicily, which was originally Carthage's territory. And Carthage didn't like that. They were getting too close to Carthage. So Carthage decided to start a war with them. And yeah, it didn't work out so well in the end for Carthage. There were 2 different Punic Wars. Does anybody know what happened in the first Punic War? Somebody tell me. Somebody tell me if you don't know. Get out your book and take a look. What happened in the first Punic War?
Rome defeats Carthage?
Nija. I'm not asking for guesses. I want someone to open up a book and tell me. That's why I'm asking you. What happened? Don't guess. What happened in the first Punic War? The first of 3, the first Punic War. Kendall. Okay, they forced the Carthaginians out of Sicily. and retain control or maintain control of that island. But it took 20 years for them to do that. Look at the island of Sicily on that map. Is that big? Sicily right here? That's Sicily right here. It's not that big, right? It's kind of small. And it took 20 years for them to fight over that land. And finally for Rome to push Carthage out. What happened in the Second Punic War? What happened in the Second Punic War? Carthage, for the most part, this should be a source of pride for you. You guys should know what happened in the Second Punic War. Carthage should. Carthage, what happened in the Second Punic War? Huh? I told you not to guess. Go look it up. What happened in the Second Punic War? The first one, Rome defeats Carthage and pushes them out of Sicily. What happens in the second one? You're on a page with elephants, you're on the right page. Aaliyah, what happened in the Second Punic War? Chris, what happened? Hannibal invaded Italy, which was amazing because, first of all, Carthage, you have to look at the map. For this doesn't sound like that big of a deal, but if you look at the map, here's Carthage. Hannibal went all the way across northern Africa, into Spain, all through Spain, comes across the Alps, right? So you have these huge mountain ranges, across the Alps and down into Italy. He actually invades Italy, goes over the Alps and invades Italy, and does all of this with elephants.
Oh my god.
Elephants! He took elephants all the way out of Carthage and around. That's insane!
More elephants.
More elephants! It's not just like, circus elephants that are kind of like, alright, where do we go today? War elephants! Big, mean war elephants. He took them. But, what happened? Rome, what happened? Kendall, what happened? Correct.
What happened to
Rome decided to go around. Kendall, say it one more time, a little bit louder, so they can hear you on the other side of the room.
They sent troops to Salmo to defeat his troops, but then he went to retreat back to his city to help them defeat.
So, Hannibal's out warring someplace. Rome, instead of going out to battle him, decides to send troops to his base, to his city where he was at, to destroy the city. Hannibal hears about this, tries to retreat, and in retreating is overwhelmed and it ends up being defeated, thus ending most of Carthage's power. The Third Punic War, there's not really much to talk about. Rome basically decided they were tired of messing with Carthage. Carthage had just sort of they sort of lingered around a little too long, and they've been too much of a nuisance. So Rome just basically went down and burned Carthage to the ground until you couldn't see it anymore. Killed most of the people, burned it to the ground. It's a pretty good time. So Hannibal, who's Hannibal then? Our next key term on our page is who's Hannibal? Hannibal. Not the guy on the new NBC show. Brilliant military general. Some people actually consider Hannibal to be one of the most amazing, brilliant generals of all time. They would probably even be in the top 10. Mainly just because of, as I told you guys, if you watch just the path that he took and the way he did it with war elements, all of the different struggles he had to go through, he had to fight through the Spanish forces. Although this was part of Carthage at the time, Spain was part of Carthage at the time, he still had to fight through Gaul. This was not part, the Gauls here, this was not part of Rome. They were their own kind of bands of people roaming about in their own territory, and they did not like this guy coming into their territory. So he had to fight the Gauls the entire way through, and then get through the Alps, and then finally fight the Romans. The fact that he keeps his entire army together that entire time is astounding. Yes? You ever try to put elephants on a boat? On a big wooden boat? They don't like it too much. In fact, one of the things that they talked about, one of the things that he did that was actually really brilliant is he did have to cross a river. He had to cross the Rhone River in France. And to do that, he did have to somehow float the elephants downstream. So they made very heavy rafts, and then they covered the whole things with dirt and sticks and grass to make it look like and feel like to the elephants that they were still standing on grass. The Mediterranean Sea is not necessarily the easiest body of water to just sail across. There are many, many storms, there are many, many shipwrecks in there. Trying to sail a group of ships from Carthage, and plus where are you going to sail them to? Sicily is now Rome, Sardinia, Corsica are on the verge of becoming Roman, all of Italy is Rome. If you sail right into Rome, they'll be waiting for you. They'll know long before you ever get there. And they'll be waiting for you. Okay. Hannibal, brilliant military general. Gaius Marius. Who was Gaius Marius? Gaius Marius. What? Gaius Marius. Who was he? Jack. Okay. He encouraged poor people to join the army. Anything else important about him? Leah? What was it? He was a consul. Anything else important about him? Zach?
Can you, if you join the army and you stay there for a while, wouldn't you give you land after you were done?
Correct. The way he encouraged poor people to join the military is he told them, if you join a legion, when you are finished with your service, I'll give you land. So all of a sudden, man, land was like, if you had land, you had enough, you could farm, you could do everything you wanted, you could start selling stuff, you could actually make money. Having land was almost the same as having large amounts of money. So this is a wonderful thing. Lucius Cornelius Sulla. Who is Lucius Cornelius Sulla? Enrique?
He became a consul in 88 BC.
Okay, he became consul in 88 BC. What else do we know about him? Courtney? He was a politician. Anything else? Why are we talking? He had to do something impressive, or else we wouldn't be talking about him today. His name wouldn't even be in our book. Kendall. Okay, there you go. There's the big thing. Lucius Cornelius Sulla and Gaius Marius ended up in a conflict which led to a civil war between the two. And who came out on top?
Lucius Cornelius Sulla.
Lucius Cornelius Sulla. Lucius Cornelius Sulla ended up coming out on top. All right, our last one that we're going to look at today, Spartacus. Spartacus. Who was Spartacus? I am Spartacus. There's a really great movie with that line. I'll tell you about it in just a second. Who is Spartacus? Okay, why would he rise up and demand freedom? Was he who was he? Why would he need to do that? Brennan. He was a gladiator, and gladiators were what type of people? Slaves. He was a slave. More important than being a gladiator was the fact that he was a slave. He was a slave. He was in the slave class of people. That would be the gladiators would fight there. Yes. I don't think he fought in the Colosseum. He lived in the outer territories. I think he didn't actually fight in Rome. But he was a slave. He was of the slave class, and he felt that the slaves were being too poorly treated. He gathered a bunch of slaves together and started a slave rebellion. There was actually a movie made a long time ago called Spartacus, and there's this great scene in there where the Romans finally conquer Spartacus's army. They finally defeat them, and all of the defeated soldiers are sitting in the grass. And the soldiers come to them and they say, we will allow most of you to return to your places of wherever you were slaves before and allow you to live and continue being slaves if you will turn over Spartacus. Who is Spartacus? Because they didn't know who he was. They just knew he was a slave. They didn't recognize him. They didn't know who he was. They didn't have like a photograph or anything. But he was going to be severely punished. And they wanted to know who it was. And so in the movie, the way the story goes, in the movie, the guy who actually was Spartacus, and I don't know why you guys are packing up stuff right now because we're not going anywhere for another 5 minutes, so stop moving. In the movie, in the last little bit of the movie, the guy who plays Spartacus, Michael Douglas, stands up, or maybe it's Kirk Douglas, one of the two of them. I always get them mixed up. Stands up in the middle of the field of all his defeated friends, and he goes, and he's willing to let all of his people go on and live, and he's going to sacrifice himself. He says, I am Spartacus. And all of a sudden his friend right next to him stands up and says, I am Spartacus. And this guy over here stands up and says, I am Spartacus. And then eventually everybody keeps standing up saying, I am Spartacus. And the Romans end up crucifying all of them.
Also, they don't know who Spartacus is.
Because they don't know who it is, and so since they can't figure it out, so they just started torturing and crucifying everybody.
Spartacus actually died?
Yeah. Yeah. It is actually a really good movie. It's an old movie. So if you were to watch it now, it'd be super lame because it's really old and the way they did it is really old. But it's a cool story. Yes, I've seen that. Yeah, not based on facts at all. Some of the fighting is, but that's what. Gladiator?
Duh.
No, not even a real person. All right, any other questions? All right, tomorrow we have our
Test.
Tomorrow is your key terms quiz. Tomorrow is your key terms quiz. So be prepared for that. It'll be just like our regular quiz that we've had before. Now there are a lot of terms here. Okay, so I'll break it up into a couple different sections. There's a lot of terms. Make sure you study them carefully. There'll be a couple extra credit questions. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, probably. All right, any questions? All right. Tomorrow when you guys finish with your key terms quiz, once everybody's finished, then you guys will have time to work on your shields as soon as that's done. Whatever time that is. Okay? If you need to pass it all to come in and work on them later, I'll have that. And just a quick update, I have my three brackets done. I have Michigan winning in all.
No! What? Florida's gonna be what?
I actually only have Florida going to the Final Four.
No, I don't know. You know a lot about Daddy, we'll get the next one. I love this hair.
Last year I was doing a terrible I usually won last year. I scored so many points. There there wasn't a mathematical way anybody could catch it.
Oh, that.
Wait up, sir. See you tomorrow. Yep. Yeah, no, that's where I just want to know where were you from? I do both.
I don't know.
Jay, you can take that. On my head, I don't know. Wait.
I don't either.
Oh, I get it. You get that teacher tomorrow. Your shield and your test. Nothing else.
No, it's way better.
We need to get started today, but before we do, I just want to double check. Rome, do you have everybody here today? Okay. Carthage, everybody's here. Gaul, are you missing? Alright. Britannia, are you missing anyone? Aiden, thank you. And Visigoths?
Nope, everyone's here.
I'm not here. Okay, everybody please take out your study guides. We're going to go over key terms so you guys can get ready for the key terms quiz, which is tomorrow. I told you guys all that yesterday.
All of them? I will do the teacher.
Hi, Courtney!
Is it open?
Courtney!
Guys. No. Free study guides. You know what? All right, let's go ahead and get started, people. All right. Section 1. Let's go ahead and start with section 1. That's a very good place to start.
Wait, let me find that.
Section 1.
There's Jackie.
Ah, here.
Jackie's here.
All right, I got it. Thank you. All right, section 1.
It's just
Yes, I do.
Why don't I have chapter 10?
Because we were here that day.
Sometimes.
No, she was in
All right, ladies and gentlemen.
I only have chapter 9.
If we can get through this, we will actually have some time for you guys to work on your shields today if we get through it. So let's see if we can try and get through this. All right. Section 1, our first key term is Aeneas. Who was Aeneas? G, who was Aeneas?
A Trojan hero.
Okay, tell me some more about him. Why is he important when we study Rome? Tori.
He's a Trojan war hero who reached Italy.
Okay, he's a Trojan war hero who reached Italy. Tell me a little bit more about him. Lexi?
He fled with his followers and journeyed to Italy.
Okay, so he had a group of people with him.
The Romans believed their history to be
That's the important part. That's the key that you have to have. Not only was he a Trojan war hero, but also the Romans believe that they can trace their ancestry back to him. Yes, Preston, you have a question?
I don't have section 2.
Section 2. Okay. So he was a Roman war hero, or he was a Trojan war hero who escaped the destruction of Troy by the Greeks, fled to the peninsula of Italy, and the Romans believe that they can trace their lineage back to him. Yes?
I don't know why, but I can't find 1 and 2.
1 and 2? Okay. All right. Anybody else missing one? Just one?
Yeah, number 1.
This is number 1.
Yeah, that front one should be number 1. Okay. Our next one. Romulus and Remus. Who are Romulus and Remus? Romulus and Remus. D, who are Romulus and Remus?
They were twins that were raised by wolves, and then Romulus killed Remus and named Rome after himself.
Okay, Romulus and Remus, they were twins, raised by wolves. Romulus killed Remus, named Rome after himself. They also, the other thing you can say about them is that they were the brothers who built Rome. They're believed to have built Rome.
So they built it and then wanted to name it.
Then they got in a fight and one of them died. Poor Remus.
Might still mention it in history.
Sure. Republic. What is a republic? What is a republic? Actually, what's a republic?
A type of government when people who have leaders to govern them.
Correct. A type of government. A republic is a type of government where people elect leaders to govern for them. Okay, so you elect your leaders. We live in a republic. We elect people to govern for us. In fact, there's an election today. It's Illinois governor, and there's a couple other ones. Is it just Illinois governor?
There's county board member.
Yeah, there's some county stuff too. But there's the
And
governor.
we pledge
Well,
allegiance
it's not even.
to the Republic of the United
Yep.
States.
Let's see here. Next one. Dictators. Who are dictators? Brenna.
Rulers with almost absolute power.
Rulers with almost absolute power. Okay? Rulers with almost absolute power. These actually played a vital role in Roman government. Having a dictator from time to time was a good thing for the Romans. They wanted it. Because when you have a large group of people making decisions, it's not always easy. The stuff doesn't always get done. But if you just have one person making decisions, it's easier. Especially in times of war. Cincinnatus. Who is Cincinnatus? And if you say the founder of Cincinnati, I'm kicking you out of class. Kicking you out of class. Brooke. Sorry, one more time. Okay, the most famous dictator of the Roman Republic, but why is he so famous? It's what he did, it's why he's so famous. It's important. Nathan.
Because they wanted him to be, and then he gave up power after what he did.
Right. They wanted him to be dictator. They asked him, they're like, please, Cincinnatus, come save us. We can't make it on our own. And he's like, alright. And they're like, we'll give you power for 6 months. He's like, alright. And after 6 weeks, he said, that's enough. I did what you needed me to do. I'm going to step down now. And he walked away. He could have had power for another like 4 months. Made all kinds of money, had all kinds of property, done all kinds of crazy things. But he didn't. He stepped away from it. People don't just normally do that. And that's what makes Cincinnatus so famous. Is that he actually walked away, voluntarily walked away from power. Okay, we have 2 more. Plebeians. Who are the plebeians? No,
They're common people.
the common people. They're the regular people, the people who do all the hard work. They're you guys. The plebeians. Do all the regular work, all the hard work. Which gives us the next one. Who are the patricians? Who are the patricians? Lexi.
The nobles.
The nobles. The people of power and influence. Basically Mr. Johnson and myself. We're the patricians. The people in the ruling class, the nobles, the high-ups. It's okay, plebes. Don't worry about it.
Plebeians.
Plebes.
Plebes.
Plebes. Alright, so plebeians are the lower class. And once again, in this society, like so many of the other societies we've studied so far, you see a definite separation between those two classes. The everyday people, the working people, the craftsmen, the farmers, the tradespeople, just the regular everyday people, and the high-end merchants, the governors, the religious leaders, the politicians. That separation between the two, the royal families and the everyday people. Notice the group that's not listed. What group's not listed in either one of those two categories? Very important part of the Roman world. Rome would not have survived without this particular group of people. The slaves. They're not listed because they didn't matter. So they didn't have a vote. The plebeians and the patricians both got to have some sort of representation in the government. The slaves did not. One of the things that was nice about the Roman way of doing things is a lot of times slaves could earn their citizenship and become plebeians. In a few cases, they actually became patricians. Okay, moving on to section 2. Section 2. What is a magistrate? A magistrate. Colin? An officials, but what do you mean by an official? Like, are we talking about like the guys in the striped vests at football games who throw flags on the field? Those are officials, right? What are we talking about? What do we mean when we say an official? What does that mean? Lexi?
Like really high leaders.
Okay, they're leaders. They're officials. They're people who work in government. They're people who work in government. Officials are government workers. Magistrates would be officials in government. You need to make sure that we're being specific about that. They're officials in government. Okay? There are a lot of different types of officials. So you want to make sure that you're specific. Magistrates would be officials in government. They worked in the government. There are senators, consuls, dictators, regular, ordinary rulers, governors. Those would be officials, magistrates. Who are the consuls? Who are the consuls? Manali. The two most powerful magistrates in Rome were the consuls. They sometimes started out as senators, sometimes they started out as generals, they started in different places, but they eventually rose to consul, which was, in a way, sort of like the way our president functions today, except where there were two of them. The Senate would talk about things and want to pass laws and want to make decisions and want to do things. But what they realized, or what the Romans realized early on, is that when you allowed everyone together to make decisions on things, not a lot of stuff got done. Because not a lot of people agreed. Imagine having every single world history class all in the same room. So basically all of 7th grade in the same room. And you guys had to figure out how to do a particular project. If there was no one leader, would it ever get done?
No.
Probably not. Because there'd be nobody to make a decision. Everybody would be arguing back and forth about how to do it. There'd be a lot of differences of opinion. And so eventually someone would end up kind of stepping up and becoming a leader. But without that leader, without one person to be able to make decisions, more than likely nothing would get done. The Romans realized this, so they elected 2 consuls. 2 people to have power to make decisions. The Senate's job was to advise them, to tell them how to do things, what they should do, what they thought they should do, and they would discuss things with the consuls. The decision was left up to the consul. Now, to make sure that not just one person had all the power to make all the decisions, they gave it to 2 people. So there would all be massive discussion, and then it would be left to 2 people to discuss and decide what to do. It was actually a really good idea. Didn't always work. Especially once Julius Caesar proclaimed himself both consuls. He was going to be both consuls. Because he had 3 legions backing him up on whatever decision he made. Roman Senate. Roman Senate. What is the Roman Senate? We just kind of talked about it a little bit there. But what is the Roman Senate? Dean?
Council of many wealthy and powerful Romans who advise the city's leaders.
Okay. They're a council of many wealthy, powerful leaders people who advise Roman leaders. Now, the Senate started out as a pretty small group of people because it started out just mainly in Rome. But as Rome started to expand and other territories became part of Rome, all of a sudden, all of these different territories, if you look at the map, all of these different territories, all of this area, everywhere in the Roman Empire started sending representatives to Rome to be senators. So what started out as a small group of people, once they started conquering northern Africa, now northern Africa, formerly Carthage, although, sorry guys, wiped out. Northern Africa, they're now part of the Roman Empire. So they're going to need to send senators to Rome to help advise, to make sure that the things that happen in Rome, the decisions that are made, are best for them. As Rome spreads, it starts to take over Gaul, and Gaul becomes a part of the Roman Empire. Gaul starts sending representatives to Rome to sit in the Senate. As they take over Britannia, the Britons send representatives. So all of a sudden you go from a small group of people making decisions to a vast, large amount of senators from all over the world trying to make decisions. That's why the consuls were so vital. Because as it grew and grew and grew, they needed someone to take leadership. Okay. Veto. What is a veto, or what does veto mean? What is a veto? What does it mean? Lexi?
Prohibit.
It means literally, it means to prohibit. But what is a veto? Does anybody know? How is a veto used? Does anybody know? A veto is used because what would happen is the Senate could make just about any decision that it wanted. But the consuls had the right to prohibit that decision. They had the right to veto a decision. We actually still use this in our form of government today. Congress, our Congress, the House of Representatives and the Senate, they can pass a law. They can vote on something, pass a law, and put it into the books as something that we all now have to abide by. But the president actually has the power to veto it. And he basically just stamps it with a thing that says, I veto it, and he signs it and sends it back, and it means that law is forbidden. Even though all of Congress and all the House of Representatives have voted on it and it is passed, he can veto it. He can he can push it away and not want to deal with it. Or not make it not a law anymore. Now, in our form of government, that's not the end. It can then go back to the House of Representatives and the Senate, and they can vote on it again and override his veto, but that doesn't happen very often. Once it gets vetoed by the president, it pretty much sticks for the most part. So, when you're looking at it, it was a way of controlling things, of controlling power. We're going to skip over Latin, we're going to go straight to checks and balances because it ties into this veto idea. What are checks and balances? Didi?
Methods to balance power.
They're methods to balance power. They had the power of veto so that the House and so that the Senate didn't make a whole bunch of laws that hurt somebody else. The consuls had the right to veto things. The Senate was there so that the consuls or dictators didn't make a whole bunch of decisions that hurt all the rest of the people. They put in these checks and balances so that not one person would always have supreme power all the time. That's the way it was under the Roman Republic. It would change a lot when it went into the Roman Empire. All right, so let's go back to Latin. What is Latin? The language of Rome is the Roman language. Does anybody speak Latin today? Does anybody speak Latin? No.
Speak Spanish.
Latin is actually what's considered a dead language. Nobody speaks it anymore. There's not a group of people that speak it, like a country. It's still widely used in science, and it shows up in Latin words and stuff show up in our language. But there are a couple of what are called Latin-based languages. Languages are based solely on Latin forms and are closely related to Latin. Does anybody know what those Latin-based languages are? If you look at the map of the Roman Empire, it might not be hard to figure out what they are. Lexi.
Italy?
Italian is one. Italian is one. Brooke? Spanish is another one.
Oh,
Two more. Tori?
I want to say German.
Not German. Not German. Brenna? Not Greek.
What's that one that?
English is not a Latin-based language.
What's that one that's like people are like?
Haley?
British?
Not British, which is English. That's English.
Oh yeah.
Preston? French is another one. There's one more. It's kind of a smaller country. People kind of forget about it sometimes. It's a smaller country. It's right next to Spain. People forget about it.
Mars.
Portugal.
Which is the country. What language do they speak?
Portuguese.
Portuguese.
Where's Portugal language?
Portugal is actually right on the western coast of Spain. It's right out here. This would be Portugal out here.
Portuguese.
Those four languages are Latin-based languages. Now, you will see if you look into the English language, if you dive into the English language, if you do one of my absolute favorite pastimes, which is called etymologies, where you look at the history of words. English is filled with Latin-based words. It's filled with Latin-based words. Tons of them. But it's not actually a Latin-based language. It's actually a Germanic-based language. Because of the way that we construct our sentences, it's a Germanic language. The way we put our subjects, nouns, predicates together, it's a Germanic language, not Latin. But we use a ton of Latin words. A ton of Latin words. Okay? All right, so that's Latin. Last one, forum in section 2. What is a forum, or what was the Roman forum? No.
Rome's public meeting place.
Okay, their meeting place. Has anybody ever been to Yahoo Answers?
Yeah.
Anybody ever been to Ask.com?
I go
Yeah.
Okay, that Yahoo Answers is a modern day Roman forum. It's a place where people go to ask questions and get answers. Now, they might not always get the most factual answers, the most correct answers, but you can get answers to questions. Does anybody remember right around Christmas time, there was advertisements out all over the place for the Chromecast? The little thing you put into your TV, and you can like watch Netflix on your phone and then fling it up to your TV, and all of a sudden you're watching it on your TV.
Yeah.
Never heard of it.
I got one right after Christmas. I went out and bought one, and I love it. It's great. But just recently, there was an update or something. I don't know what's going on, but just recently, whenever I try and watch Netflix, it'll start running, and I'll play about 5 minutes of the show, and then all of a sudden it starts buffering, and it'll run at like 25%, and I get that little red circle of death on Netflix, which means you're never going to be able to watch whatever you want to watch because it's just circling and circling and loading and loading and loading and loading.
Oh, that makes sense.
So I got that. I keep getting that over and over and over again. It's really annoying. I really wanted to watch Bones last night, and I just couldn't. So I went online and I went to the forum area, which is a group of users like me. It's a group of people like me, and some experts, and they look through things. And you can ask just about any question. So I asked them, why is my Chromecast doing this? Why isn't it working? And I'm waiting for a response. They'll get back to me like in a couple days. Somebody will respond to me. But you can go through and look through all these questions. The Romans did sort of the same way. When they wanted to learn something or they wanted to share some piece of information, they would get together in the forum and they would talk about it, share information, ask questions, and talk about things. All right, section 3. Let's move on to section 3. I'll give you a little heads up. Rome and Carthage, it might be a good idea to have books out ready, getting ready for this section. And be looking at the Punic Wars, just to kind of give you guys a heads up for this section. Legions. What is a Roman legion? What were the Roman legions? Nathan?
Wait, did you do something too?
I don't remember. Friday, I think. Did you not get 3? Okay. What is a Roman legion?
Oh.
What are the legions? Jules, what's a legion? Groups of up to 6,000 soldiers. When Julius Caesar went just about anywhere, when he was a general, he went with 3 legions with him, just about everywhere he went. So he had about 18,000 men no matter where he went with him. 18,000 exceedingly well-trained military people with him no matter where they went. The Roman legionnaire was one of the most feared soldiers of the time. They were very impressive in battle. Punic Wars. Punic Wars. What were the Punic Wars? Brooke, what were the Punic Wars? Okay, a series of wars between Carthage and Rome. Somebody from Rome, tell me what happened in the first Punic War. Somebody from Rome, tell me what happened in the first Punic War. There were 3. Carthage, you guys might want to get ready to tell me what happened in the second Punic War. So first Punic War, what happened? Emily, got it? Emily, go ahead.
I'm not sure this is right, but I think like both of the Carthage and Rome went to this island and wanted to take it over, and then they both wanted, so they had to both fight for which one got it.
Correct. In the first Punic War, Rome was still a small area. It was still a small kingdom. It wasn't quite an empire yet. It hadn't even started spreading out yet. They were still rather small, but they were strong. And they were here in mainly just in Italy, in this darker red portion of Italy. And Sicily is right next door. It's just like, I mean, you could almost jump across. Not really, but it's really close. Carthage is also pretty close to Sicily. And both of them wanted this area as a military outpost and because of the grain and wheat production that Sicily had. So they both wanted it, and both sent armies in to take it over. And after 20 years of bloody battle over this small island, Rome became victorious and kicked out Carthage. Carthage had to go back to their home base in North Africa. So Carthage, what happened to the Second Punic War? Dee, what happened to the Second Punic War?
We tried to attack Rome ourselves, and we had Hannibal.
Okay, you tried to attack Rome yourself. Now, they didn't take the most direct way possible, instead of just like sailing across the sea and going right into Rome. Instead, Hannibal led his troops along with his war elephants and his military out of Carthage, through here, that's great, just deal with it. Through Spain, which was part of the Carthaginian Empire. Spain was part of the Carthaginian Empire. So they went through here. Now, they had to cross through Gaul. The problem with crossing through Gaul is Gaul wasn't part of the Roman Empire, they weren't part of the Carthaginian Empire. They were their own groups of people, and they didn't necessarily like Hannibal and all his war elephants walking through. So they fought them along the way. Hannibal makes it through Gaul, then goes over the Alps, a large set of mountains, very cold, very nasty, with war elephants, makes it into Italy, and then starts attacking Rome. How did that turn out?
Probably not good.
How did that turn out for how did the Second Punic War end? How did the Second Punic War end? So Hannibal's led his troops all over the place, war elephants, looking like he's about to destroy everything on the planet. And what happens, Preston?
It says he was never able to capture Rome itself, and he rushed home because the Rome sent armies to attack Carthage, and they destroyed Carthage and taken Rome.
Yeah, Hannibal tried to, as he got closer and closer, the Romans decided to attack Carthage instead. And Hannibal had left his city basically unprotected, wanted to go back and try to protect his hometown, and couldn't get back in time. Rome burned it to the ground, destroyed Hannibal, thus ending. That's basically how the Third Punic War ended. Rome basically found an excuse later on to fully attack Carthage. You guys had caused too much problems for my Romans over here, and so my Romans just sort of swept over, burnt your city to the ground, and killed basically everybody. Basically. Okay. So that's how that war ended. Hannibal we've talked about a little bit. So who is Hannibal? Who is Hannibal? He's not the guy who eats people on NBC.
He isn't?
No, it's a different Hannibal. That's a different Hannibal. Who is Hannibal? Lexi, who's Hannibal?
He set out for Rome and was a brilliant general.
He was a brilliant Carthaginian general. Brilliant Carthaginian general.
With a couple of flaws.
Hannibal. Okay, next one, Gaius Marius. Who is Gaius Marius? Aditi, who's Gaius Marius? Okay, he encouraged poor people to join the army. How did he do that? How did he encourage poor people to join the army? Did he just like walk up and say, hey, you should join the army. Come on, man, it's a good idea. You should join the army. Just do it, man. Do it, man. Sweet. Join the army.
Life would be much better.
Sweet. How did he do it? Ashley?
You promised them land after they returned from their service.
Yeah, he promised them land. Promised them land. If you join the army,
No, they weren't gonna make it back.
if you join the army and you survive, I think it was like a 16-year tour, you can get a whole bunch of land when you're done. Right? We don't necessarily promise you where the land's going to be. It's probably going to be some swamp down in Foggy Bottom. But, you know, you get land. That's right. You know. We sort of do the same. Our military sort of does the same thing now. If you join the military, you can get what? What's all the things that they show on the commercials? What do you get? What's the big thing they try and promote to get people in the military these days? College tuition, college education. Join the military. We'll help you pay for college. Right? That's the big thing now. So it's sort of a similar way. If you join the military, here's some benefits. Here's some good things that you can get out of it. You can better yourself by joining the military. The Romans did the same thing. You can be basically a slave or a plebeian who has nothing on the bottom, and you can join the military and get land, be a landowner, become a farmer, and if you work your farm properly, you could possibly become rather wealthy. Lucius Cornelius Sulla. Who is Lucius Cornelius Sulla? Other than a guy with a really cool middle name, Cornelius. That's epic. Julian, who is he? Oh, you're not raising your hand?
I was just like
Lucius Cornelius Sulla. Who is he? Who is he? Manali, who is he? He's a politician who what? Okay, he's a politician who became a consul. Is that all he did?
No.
If that's all he did, why are we still talking about him today? If that's all, I mean, they had like hundreds and hundreds of consuls. Why would we still be talking about him today? What's so important about this guy? Logan. He then became dictator. Okay, what else? Action.
he kind of started a civil war in Rome.
He started a civil war. This is huge. He started a civil war. Not many people can like credit themselves with that. Hey, what'd you do this weekend? I took a nap and watched some Netflix. What'd you do? I started a civil war. He started a civil war, people. This guy is huge. Himself and Gaius Marius got into an argument. And this argument escalated to the point of starting a civil war in Rome.
They're insane.
Which he ended up winning and taking control. Alright, last Spartacus. Who was Spartacus? Brooke, who is Spartacus? Guys, ladies and gentlemen, you guys still need to focus. We got one last one. Who is Spartacus? Okay, he was a former gladiator who rose up against the Romans to defend freedom. What class of citizen were the gladiators? What class of citizen were the gladiators? Were they plebeians? Were they patricians? No, what were they? They were slaves. A gladiator was a slave. And Spartacus rose up with a group of other gladiators, started with a group of other gladiators and turned into a large slave army. Spartacus wasn't the first slave revolt. He wasn't the first and it wasn't the last. There were a number of different slave revolts where the slaves would rise up and say, this is unfair, we don't like this, we're going to fight against you. He wasn't the first and he wasn't the last, but he was the most successful. They won a large number of battles and they defeated many Roman legions. They actually, in March on Rome, they got close. They terrified Rome. It was a very, very strong army. There's an old movie. I think is it Michael Douglas or Kirk Douglas? I always forget which one. I think it's Kirk Douglas that's in it. There's an old movie called Spartacus. And in the movie, at the very end, or near the end of the movie, Spartacus's army has been defeated for the first time. They're stopped. And the Roman army has encircled them. They are all the surviving soldiers of Spartacus's army, all the surviving slaves, are sitting on the ground, and the Roman military comes to them, and they don't know who Spartacus is. They don't know who the leader is. He's just a slave. They don't know who he is. And so they start asking around who Spartacus is, and they start telling the slaves that some of them will be able to go home, or at least go back to being a slave, and not be killed, if they'll just tell them who's Spartacus. Who is Spartacus? We want to punish Spartacus for starting this revolt. If you tell us who Spartacus is, the rest of you guys can go free. So the guy Spartacus is sitting there in the grass, and he's thinking about this, and he's looking at all of his friends, and all of his friends are potentially about to die, and he decides that instead of letting them all die, he will turn himself in, and he'll suffer the punishment so all his friends can go free. And so he stands up in the middle of the grass. It's this big dramatic scene. And he goes, "I am Spartacus." And it's all of a sudden everybody looks at, all of his friends look around, and all of a sudden one of his other friends stands up and goes, "No, I'm Spartacus." And this other guy stands up and says, "No, I'm Spartacus." This other guy stands up and says, "No, I'm Spartacus." And then some chick stands up and says, "I'm Spartacus." And they're all standing up, "I'm Spartacus." And like the whole army stands up and says, "I'm Spartacus." And they're showing that, basically telling each other that they're together. That if they are going to have to die, they would rather die than be slaves. They would rather stand up for what they believe in than to go back to being slaves. And so, does anybody want to know what the Romans do? They crucified them all. They killed them all. Every single one of them.
Even Spartacus?
Even Spartacus. Every single one of them. That's how the movie ends, actually. Is the movie ends with all of them being crucified and left on the side of the road. On the side of the road, so that as you go down the road, you can see what happens to people who try and betray Rome. People who try and fight against Rome. Okay, tomorrow, key terms quiz. It's going to be the same kind of format as every other quiz we've taken so far. Multiple choice with some true false and some extra credit. Please go home and study tonight. Be ready for the quiz tomorrow. I am Spartacus.
No, you're not.
I'm Spartacus.
I'm Spartacus.
And they were all going to be killed anyway.
What?
Is it
What
bad?
period? See, if it was me, I would be like, if it would have been me, I would be like, Marley Spartacus. Marley. I'm going home. Marley Spartacus. What if Marley was here?
I'm feeling slightly better, but I feel like I'm getting an eye open.
Just wrap it around my and her aprons would never like fit, like they would get stuck on my hand. I didn't know I did wear this. Whoa! You cannot. Then like during this cheer, she's like, yeah. And she's like, shelter.
Yeah, we're on 8 right now.
You know that doesn't see everybody?
Have you seen mine?
Really warm. It does. I was
So the best part about it is it's all actually like grammar is actually based on
all the sisters are like, don't have your phone like need it. It's fire.
I like
Oh yeah, I forgot you went to the same school. Did you walk out? Oh, one of them wanted to go back to my shoulder. That's not whenever I did
but I used to watch that with her, and I wouldn't mind
You're soft. We're up.
It's Dory too.
Ready to go to hell?
Marlius Spartacus.
I'll tell you guys.
We should get T-shirts made that says Marlius Spartacus.
I'm guessing they would kill everybody.
Yeah, probably. Or at least a large number of them. They probably would have at least just sent them. If they would have killed them all, they would have sent them to like the forced labor mines, which were like horrible. Like you have like being a regular slave, and then you have the mines, which are just, and not the mines of Moria. That's totally.